A number of factors have recently contributed to a heightened awareness of the comics medium in the public eye. Obviously, this is important to the medium because nobody will consider comic books as art if they're not aware that they even still exist. Comics have usually been portrayed in a pretty negative manner when they're dealt with at all, and subject to misunderstandings and silly preconceptions. The following changes and advancements have helped to put comics in a more reasonable category of entertainment at the very least, and as a respectable, versatile form of expression at best. Millions of Americans go to movies every day. Film is perhaps the most popular entertainment form in the country. Movie stars are idolized, and Hollywood is overflowing with people trying to get into the trade. Even extremely bad movies make more money than any dozen of the best-written comic books in the industry. Can there be a better forum to tell the population about the power and potential of comic books? The history of movies based on comic books has been spotty at best, with high points like Superman and The Crow, and Tank Girl and Steel among the low points. All too often, the promise of a new comic book movie has turned into a pitiful farce. Lately, however, a surprising number of movies have been getting it right. People who care about the source material and want to remain true to it have been getting involved in these movies with more frequency. Just as a bad movie will dampen public perception of comics, so will a good movie improve it. A noticeable move towards less traditional comic book material is also becoming evident. Independent and creator-owned comics are gaining more attention from Hollywood. The IDW series, 30 Days of Night, became an overnight hit and made its creators instant millionaires when the movie rights were purchased for it. Ghost World, From Hell, and Road to Perdition are other examples of successful non-mainstream comic book films. The trend continues with the upcoming Hellboy and American Splendor adaptations. Comic book properties are getting much better treatment by Hollywood, and people are enjoying them, millions at a time. They're being given the message that comic books are a valid form of entertainment for all ages, and hopefully they'll pick up on it. Comic book properties are being snatched up at an alarming rate, which itself is nothing new, but the percentage of them actually entering production rather than simply sitting in limbo has certainly increased, no doubt spurred by the success of films like Spider-Man. As long as the momentum keeps up, the world doesn't need another Judge Dredd. The comic book industry will have a solid platform for proving its legitimacy. Whether the full potential of that is reached is another question. So far, there's been little to indicate that the films have increased sales of related comic books, but that may change as more movies are released and interest in comics continues to rise. Bookstores, libraries, schools, and museums are recognizing the value of comic book art as well. Bookstores are carrying more graphic novels than ever before. Diamond formed a new book distribution division in 2002, and Fantagraphics has a book distribution deal with W.W. Norton. Both moves stand to give comic books and graphic novels a greater presence in the bookstore market. Libraries are expanding their selection of comic books and graphic novels as well, and there are quite a few programs devoted to providing graphic novels to libraries. These are two public avenues that really should have been taken advantage of long ago. But it's better to have late progress than none at all. Placing comic books and graphic novels in bookstores and libraries is important in raising public awareness of the comics medium, so long as they aren't restricted to shelving in the children's section. Public schools have been a little slow in picking up on the trend, but numerous colleges and universities have introduced courses and fields of study related to comic books and their cultural significance. Museums are even endorsing comic books in a new way. In the last several years, comic book art has been the subject of many museum exhibits throughout the country. The New York City Comic Book Museum has sponsored exhibits at university libraries, public museums, and many other forums. The NCCBM is interesting in that it doesn't have an actual public building. Its founder has been looking for a home and raising funds for it since 1999. A virtual exhibit space exists. The NCCBM is vital since there are no other museums in the U.S. devoted entirely to comic books. There are a few cartoon art museums whose exhibits often include comics, but none that focus solely on comic books. Also, the NCCBM doesn't just promote mainstream superhero comic books. The sponsored exhibits have had such varied themes as librarians and comic books and AIDS, and Heroes Among Us, the artwork of 9/11. Mainstream and alternative comics are given equal space, making it clear that the guys in tights aren't the only option for comic book entertainment. However you want to view comic books as an art form, an entertainment medium, a literacy aid, collector's items, or any combination thereof, their success relies heavily on public acceptance. So it stands to reason that the more people recognize the merits of comic books, the healthier the industry will be for it. Comics have been a niche market for too long. They can't hope to thrive if they're just sitting in the dark corner of the public's perception. It's time people began to appreciate the fact that comic books are an important part of America's cultural identity and one of the few purely American art forms. And there's been a noticeable movement since the mid-1990s to facilitate that awareness. Let's hope it continues.